Porsche 911. More specifically, the GT3. A car known for its advanced technology and confusing names is a 991.2 or a 992. And did the 996 come after the 992? These days it seems like everyone and their mom wants one. But why? Well, guess what? Today we're talking about Porsches. Porsches. Let's go. The year's 1964 and I have a Brooklyn accent because I've never been to New York, but I like to talk like one. I'm going to stop. Sorry for people that live in New York. So back in the old days when Porsche, we're just going to stick with Porsche for now. I think that's probably the American term. I'm from America. We're going to stick with that. Back in the old days, the 991 Porsche was originally called the 991. Kind of crazy. It was produced from 1964 to 1989 and it was a hit. Have you ever heard of that car? Kind of famous, right? 911. So anyways, they're making this 911 sports car and that went on till 1989, but then you also got to remember that at the same time Porsche decided to make it really confusing and they launched another car in 1975, the 930, that went till 1989 as well. So they had two different car generations going on at the same time. It didn't really make sense and a lot of people don't understand why they did it, but they still did it. So the year 1989 comes around. The Porsche 964 comes out. Car is featuring their all-new revolutionary Tiptronic automatic transmission. What does that mean for you if you own one? Well, you can go like this on little paddles and shift the gears. Honestly, I don't even know if it had paddles, but I know you can manually shift the gears. Had really nice airbags on the inside of the car. Had two dual airbags. First production car to ever have that standard. Kind of cool. Porsche cared about safety. I guess that says something about their drivers. Maybe they're not the best. I don't know. Just saying. So, 1994 comes around. 993 comes out. It goes till 1998. This was the last air-cooled generation of the Porsche, so you can imagine it was pretty important for all the fanboys. With that being said, what does that mean? It means this car was even faster. It had a refined suspension setup. It had a better chassis, and it was just an all-around better car to take to the track. I mean, your garage and sitting there and never be driven. So the power rose to 282 horsepower, pretty good considering it was a naturally aspirated engine. The turbocharged version hit 402. They broke the 400s. Back then in the 1990s, that was really freaking fast, yo. Like fast. To the rear wheels too. The 996 went till 2005 and it was a special car. Some might call it not special because it was the first water-cooled Porsche. Also, the GT3 came out. What does that mean? Well, in order to race your car in the GT3 circuit, you need a homologation vehicle that you make 500 units or more of. This is where Porsche really started to shine.
This, of course, is a Porsche 911, a car I've never really liked.
I mean, it made more horsepower, 381 horsepower, naturally aspirated, again, just insane. Better handling, better suspension. They just take over the industry for racing. In a straight line, it might not be the fastest car, but when you take it on a track, what else is gonna keep up? When you go to a track day, who's there winning every time? A Porsche! Because they're crazy. And don't even get me started on the Turbo S. That thing was making 444 horsepower, and for the early 2000s, that was absurd. That car was fast, not only around the corners, but in a straight line too. Not many other cars could keep up with it. That's why they didn't make many of them. It was limited to 1,500 units worldwide. Keep up with that, guys. Come on. Hey, by the way, if you're enjoying this video, can you subscribe, please? It just helped me make more of them. Come on, I'm watching you do it right now. Do it. At least hit the like button for me. Can you do that? 2004 through 2013, we have the 997. This generation really shines in my eyes. Why? Because from here on out, Porsche really stepped it up. They had their GT3, they had their GT3 RS, their GT2, their GT2 RS. They had some crazy cars. The GT3, best track car on the street again. But then they came out with the GT3 RS and took that car by storm. Better handling, better suspension. I mean, just look at the car. It looks beautiful. All these cars look beautiful. GT2, same thing, but rear wheel drive. What? GT2 RS. turboed, rear wheel drive, ready for the track. You can't beat it. No, I'm serious. Like, the GT3 RS is an insane car. 617 horsepower, rear wheel drive, 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. That's absurd. If you look up any of these cars, they sell for so much money. Like, so much. 2011 rolls around. What does this mean? The new Porsche comes out, baby. 991. Not 911, the 991. They don't make it easy. It came out. Was in production for a few years, you could say. 991 GT3. Awesome car. Why? Has 469 horsepower. Goes to 8,600 RPMs. That's insane. And it was paired with their PDK, their Porsche Doppelkupplung transmission. Anyone know what that means? Because I don't. And to top it off, it even had rear wheel steering. Beat that. So, Porsche made the 991.2 GT3. It was just a facelifted version, but it also went to 9,000 RPMs. What? But it was really confusing because it wasn't the 991, it was the 991.2, and then after that there's a 992, but then there's also a 996, which is apparently way before it at the beginning, and then there's a 911, which isn't the 991. So the 991 GT3 RS was a literal track weapon. It had a roll cage in it. That just shows you how serious that car is. It had 493 horsepower and a 6-cylinder engine that didn't have a turbo or supercharger. How does that happen? I don't know. Someone talk to Porsche because I'd like to know. Oh, and guess what? When they made the 991.2 GT3 RS, yes, I know that name's really long, but let's move on. It made 20 more horsepower, so it went over 500 horsepower for a naturally aspirated 6-cylinder engine. And it had 9,000 RPM. Ka-chow! And of course, because it's race car, they had carbon fiber all over it and a race car tire compound. So when you took it to the track, in other words, no one could keep up. You want to talk about not keeping up? Let's talk about the 991 GT3 RS. Yeah. It was a 6-cylinder turbocharged engine that made 690 horsepower. Same thing, it was set up to go to the track, had all the suspension, all the aero you needed to take out anyone and your grandma. On the track, of course. But then guess what? In 2019, they came out with the 992. They just had to one-up themselves because they weren't already good enough. So now we're up to the modern generation. And let me tell you, like I said earlier, it seems like everyone wants one of these. And I understand why. When they came out with this car, everyone went crazy. When you look at the body lines on this car, it's just like, how can you not like it? It's perfect. So this 992 GT3 RS had the same amount of horsepower as the previous 991.2, 518 horsepower, just absolutely absurd. And it has a 0 to 60 time, are you ready for this, of 2.7 seconds. Not only does the GT3 RS look crazy, but it also has some crazy features as well. Like adjusting the suspension dampeners on the fly, adjusting the aero on the fly. I mean, what? It's a literal track weapon. I've said that before with other Porsches, but that's what they're trying to make, is a track weapon. You take a Porsche to the track and no one's keeping up. I'm sorry. But you want to talk about absurd? Let's talk about that Turbo S. That bad boy makes 641 horsepowers and it goes 0 to 60. Are you ready for this? 2.4 seconds. I know, that's crazy. In a straight line, not really any car can keep up with it. It is absurd. Like I said earlier, it is absurd. I'll say it again. It's nuts. So to kind of solve that equation, now that we have all of the baseline factors laid out, why do people like Porsches so much these days? For a while, I think they were just kind of the old man's car, like the German Corvette a little bit. But I mean, when you look at this new modern Porsche, I think they hit the nail on the head. Or that head, isn't the hammer on the head? No, it is the nail on the head. Anyways, this car has modern styling that I think everyone was wishing the Porsche had before. I mean, it already was a beautiful looking car, but it really just made this car perfect. It had the wide body lines people wanted, the big wings, and of course the sound of this car. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think the Porsche 992 would be a bad car for an old person if you can get over their crazy bucket carbon fiber seats. But picture this, A young kid pulling up in this bad boy, or your grandfather? It doesn't make sense unless your grandfather is really cool. If he is, that's the car for him. That'd be such a cool grandfather. I'm gonna be honest with you here. Before I made this video, I didn't really like Porsches that much. I just thought they all looked the same. What's the point of one? But hear me out. Now that I made this video, I've kind of researched a little bit, figured out the heritage behind it. There's a reason why they all look the same. Because it's timeless, and because they didn't make a bunch of random cars over generations to appeal to a certain audience. They stuck with their perfectly designed car that worked for them then and just refined it over the years. So what does that leave? This car that no one else can keep up with because they've been researching it for over, I don't know, how long has it been? 60, 70 years? That's crazy. Whereas other brands like Lamborghini, Ferrari, maybe McLaren, they're popping new cars out what seems like every year. I don't think a Porsche is going to have the same kind of status that any of those cars are going to have because they all kind of look the same. But you're getting a well-refined machine. And for that price point, isn't that what you're trying to go after? I don't know. Seems like a pretty good deal to me.